All right, guys, we are back for part two. Now, I have went ahead and sped it up a little bit, and we're gonna keep going with this thing.
The total initiative relative to what we can do with more border patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now. All terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere, all over the world. They're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak.
But you did just say that, right? He said they endorsed me for president. I'm not gonna say that, but you literally just said that.
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed three, and his administration killed an Al Qaeda person coming in his administration, killed three American soldiers, That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorists ever got through, but the idea they're emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people, that's simply not true. There's no data to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating, he's lying.
President Trump, staying on the topic of immigration, you've said that you're going to.
So I gotta call a spade a spade. So he says he's exaggerating, right? So, but if he's exaggerating, then that means there is an element of truth behind what he said. Okay? So, and exaggerating and lying are two totally different things. An exaggeration is based on, some form of fact that is just, stretched way out. That's an exaggeration, right? And the second part there is he says he's lying. So which is it? Is he exaggerating or is he lying? Are they doing more to protect criminals than, any other administration would have apparently? And if they are, well then guess what? He's not lying in that case.
He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, and we have to get them out fast because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all, and he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I had the highest approval rating for veterans taking care of the VA. He has the worst. He's gotten rid of all the things that I approved. Choice that I got through Congress.
So I definitely want to do a lot of research into that. And I would love to actually hear from some of our veterans, right? I may actually, maybe go to Reddit or maybe Facebook and, just start some discussions with actual veterans and just ask, right? Are things worse for you now than they were under Trump? And I'm pretty sure a lot of them are going to say things are a lot worse, right? And I don't even have any facts to back up that assessment, but that's why I'm going to do the research first. But I'm just saying, from everything else I know, I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to say. Even if, there are still protections and things to help veterans, there's still inflation. There's still a lot of problems with the economy that's going to also affect our veterans.
All of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half because he's done all these great things that we did. And I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by allowing all of these people to come in. And it's a very sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single thing he said is a lie. Every single one. For example, veterans are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the PACT Act. 1 million of them now have insurance, and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. and his group opposed that. We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq.
Well, here's the thing. So he's talking about medical coverage, and that is important, and that's a great thing. But I would argue the biggest thing they need is financial security, right?
I went to the World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his four-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers.
So here's the thing. Those veterans are going to need a lot more than just health coverage, which that is a great thing. Yes, they do need health coverage, but they need a lot more than that. And as far as this remark right here goes, the first thing is I would like to know why he didn't go and, who it was that actually said it, because I rewound it several times. I could not make out the name that he said, right? And if that person already had a bias against Trump, then it makes sense for him to say that.
My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
President Trump?
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taking better care. I'm so glad this came up, and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
Four-star general standing to your side was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right, thank you so much.
Let's move to the topic of foreign policy.
But if the only thing they're doing is, giving them health benefits, that's not enough. When we're talking about veterans being homeless, giving them health insurance isn't going to all of a sudden make them not homeless anymore, right? And for that matter, like, all the people that are homeless, they need help too, right? And why aren't we talking about that? And the other thing that drives me crazy is they always talk about we're creating more jobs, what is something that's always missing from that conversation? We're making jobs easier for convicted felons to get. We're making jobs that are easier to get in general, right? Because let's face it, a lot of times, you could go in and put an application to all kinds of places and never get, a job anywhere. So yeah, just creating more jobs isn't enough. You need to make sure people are actually able to find work and find good jobs too.
I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its third year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine.
So was he saying they're only offering that deal because they don't like Biden? I'm not so sure about that one.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her.
Now, that is true. He did specifically say peacefully, right? He also said, if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. So then the question is, what exactly did he mean when he said that? Right? And was there any comprehension there that, by him saying that they were going to go and do that? And as I'm thinking about this, there's something else, I definitely got to say, right? It's very possible that even if he hadn't said anything at all about going to the Capitol, fighting like hell, if he hadn't said any of that, that still could have happened. They still probably would have went up there to do that. So is that still incitement? I don't know. I really don't. Like, there's a lot of things that is like really complex, and this is one of those things. It's like, if they're going to find him guilty on that, which I don't know if they have or not, like, there's just so many different things going on all at once. Like, one person can't keep track of it unless that's like the only thing they do, right? So I don't know. But we can all come together in this community specifically, right? And we can talk about this. And you guys could tell me what information I might be missing or information I might be looking at the wrong way. You know what? I didn't say anything about the previous segment about the wars and all that kind of stuff. Again, that's one of those areas that I know so little about it that I really don't feel like I should be speaking about it, right? The only thing I will say is that we shouldn't let the bad guys win just to stop a war because of the ramifications that would come out of that in the end, right? Now, if I'm wrong by saying that, you guys feel free to put in the comments and let me know, hey, I disagree with you. Stopping a war at any cost is what needs to be done. Then that means you're saying Ukraine should get completely turned over to Putin. You're saying that anytime any country wants to start a war with another country and take over, that means we should support the bad guys in order to minimize the carnage, right? And I understand that sentiment, but at the same time, you're setting up to let bad guys have world domination is what you're doing if that's the mentality you want to take, right? So that's kind of, in my opinion, not a good strategy at all.
Daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, what they say, but she's saying, oh no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor in writing, by the way, the mayor in writing turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see, I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it too, and you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her. And she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I don't know, she can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility.
Yeah, we need to verify that. 100% we need that verified. Okay. Now, if that's true, that means Trump knew there was a risk of an insurrection, right? Trump knew there was a chance that people could go there who were obviously, distraught, upset, and with that many people are in that kind of mindset, bad things can happen. So if that's true, then that starts to make me question, right? When he said fight like hell, like what was he actually saying? What did he actually mean? Like what message was he trying to get across, right? What was his intent with that? Because I know anyone against Trump would say, oh, he obviously wanted them to go and attack the Capitol, attack the police, you know, stop the, stop the steal, stop all this other things, right? So, it, with what he's saying right now, is starting to cast a lot of doubt on that.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one. Number two, that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did?
So here's what I'm going to say about this. Because those trials weren't aired, okay, who's really to say what was going on in those courtrooms, right? Some people that supposedly was going and actually sitting in the courtroom, right? But who's to say if they really were? At that point, you're just taking someone's word for it, and I just can't do that. Now, if there was at least audio, right, of trials or whatever else, then I could compare that to what they were saying was going on, and then that could start to get me to a place where I could say, okay, this is starting to look more credible. But without any actual evidence of that taking place, then who's to say? And I really think all those trials should have been filmed. We should have been able to go to YouTube and watch the dang trials. And because it wasn't filmed, and because we couldn't go and actually watch the trials happen, that alone gives more credibility to Trump. What he's saying, like it was all a hoax, and everything was all fake, right? Because I would think if you wanted to directly avoid that from happening, to where that could look credible from what Trump is saying, then you would want people to be able to see for themselves, right? So them making that decision to say, no, there's not going to be any cameras, that's not okay in my opinion.
And presidential debate live from Georgia. Let's talk about persistent challenges you both faced in your first terms, and you'd certainly face again in a second term. President Biden, while black unemployment dropped to a record low under your presidency, black families still earn far less than white families. Black mothers are still 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes, and black Americans are imprisoned at 5 times the rate of white Americans. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed that you haven't made more progress?
To acknowledge you made a lot of progress, number one. The fact of the matter is there are more small black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number two, the wages of black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're providing housing for black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists in
this is what I've always wondered, because a lot of people will say, Trump's not racist. Trump's, done great things for the black communities and all this other stuff. But I'm like, okay, what? What specifically has Trump done or has Trump advocated for to actually help black communities, right?
These corporate corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. And in addition to that, we find that the impact on the choice that black families have to make relative to childcare is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce black childcare costs. I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for childcare costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those childcare protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any black family, first-time home buyer, should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those black families and those black individuals who provided had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, doctor, and anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest was forgiven after 10 years. Millions.
So look, I think this is the same problem with the veterans, right? Let's give the veterans health care and then let's call it a day. Like, that's the message I got from him, right? It needs to go far beyond that. If you're looking at a veteran who's homeless and you're saying, let's give him health care and call it a day, you've essentially done nothing for that veteran. You've done nothing. Right? It's like, for one, he's homeless. He doesn't have any money. He doesn't have transportation to go to a doctor. He doesn't have, like, literally anything. And you're saying, oh, healthcare, that'll fix everything. No, it's not. That's the same problem here. Right? There are great things that he's advocating for, but it needs to go far beyond that. So in order to, like, start to fully, explain what I'm talking about, think about the video I'm Not Racist from Joyner Lucas. I'm going to play a clip of that video.
I'm sorry, you can never feel my life. Trying to have faith, but I never feel alright. It's hard to elevate when this country's ran by whites, judging me by my skin color and my blackness. Trying to find a job, but ain't nobody call me back yet. Now I gotta sell drugs and put food in my cabinet. You crackers ain't slick, this is all a part of your tactics. Don't talk about no motherfucking taxes when I ain't making no dough. You think you know everything, but you don't.
So again, this goes back to the thing of, let's just, give someone health care and call it a day. Let's lower their taxes and call it a day, right? But if you don't have a job and you're not making any money anyways, then what good is the tax break for you, right? Nothing. Like, you've literally done nothing to help that person. If you really want to help, create jobs that anybody can get and make sure it's fair. And this problem isn't just in black communities. Like, this problem is going on everywhere. Any community that is, living in poverty is going to have these problems, right? Because poverty and crime rates go hand in hand. So that means every single community that has a lot of poverty, there's going to be a lot of people who's going to have criminal records. And what do we know about criminal records and trying to find employment? They're going to look at your criminal history. They're going to see that you've been to jail. They're going to see that you've, was dealing drugs. They're going to see all of those things, and then they're going to say, we're not going to hire you. At the end of the day, I think we should be more understanding that people can come from a rough past and have made mistakes and have done the wrong things, either from desperation from not having money, not having a job, then you turn, like he just said, now I gotta sell drugs to put food in the cabinets, right? That's a real problem. If and like he said, he's been looking for a job, but ain't nobody called him back. So that's a real problem. And my opinion is anyone who is like trying to find work and they can work, they should be able to find work. And that's why I said, if you want to create more jobs and you want to get recognition for that, that's great. Create more jobs. But make sure you're creating jobs that anyone can get, even if they have a criminal record, so that these problems can start to calm down, can start to settle down. If more people can work, then there's less crime because, people who are able to work aren't going to need to commit crimes to pay their bills. And that's the whole thing, and that has nothing to do with race. Okay? You look at trailer parks where, like, everyone is in poverty, they're going to be going through the same thing. White people are going to sell drugs just like black people, just like anyone else in a similar situation, right? And that part of life, right, that anyone in desperate situations would turn to crime to get by, that has nothing to do with black culture, right? Or anything like that. That's just adaptation. They're just looking at a situation and finding another way to get through it, right? And that right there, such a great video, and I only showed a small portion of it just because that was relevant to what I was trying to say. And I'll put a link to it in the description so you guys can go check it out if you haven't seen it yet.
Badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any black family, first-time home buyer, should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those black families and those black individuals who provided had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing.
The other thing, too, this creates a lot of problems. If you're creating special programs that are meant to help people based on race, you're creating a lot of problems, right? I understand the sentiment behind it, right? Because they've had further disadvantage than a lot of other people. The simplest way to put that, as wealth is handed down through the generations, so is poverty. So is resentment against the government. So is all these other things, because those people have those morals and those standards. We hate cops, we hate the government because of slavery, we hate all these other things, and guess what? That tends to, not always, but can rub off on their children. Their children grow up, but they have those same principles and those same concepts, right? I was taught when I grew up not to trust white people. I was taught this, I was taught that. So that is understandable that, some people feel that way, right? It's understandable, but at the same time, we have to counter that with facts and logic, not with hatred. The only thing that is going to do, if you respond with hatred and say, oh, you hate me, guess what? I hate you too. You know what that's going to do? That is going to further prove their point right. In their mind, they're going to say, you know what? You proved me right. We don't need to do that. We really don't. The point we need to make is that I understand, things have been bad in the past. I understand all these other things. And, but everyone is different. No one is guilty by association. Just because I look like someone else who might have done something horrible or have treated you bad or something like that, that wasn't me, right? That's the simplest way to put it. And if they don't like that, if they don't want to be around you, that's fine. You don't have to be around me. I will go my own way. But you can take that little bit of knowledge with you. It's simple as that, right? The other part of that is there are white communities who are going to suffer just as much, right? And they need help too, right? And so what those programs should be about, it should be about people with criminal histories, people who are living in poverty, people who, you know, probably don't have nice clothes, can't look nice for a job interview, can't do all these other things. And that's nothing against them. That's against, society. That's a problem with society. It's not a problem with them. And the reason why I bring all this up is because it needs to go a lot further than just, making it easier for them to buy a house and do all these. Those are great things, but I would say start at the bottom. Start with the people who need the most. Start with the people who are homeless, right? Because they literally have nothing. Start with them. Then work your way up to people who are in homes. Help them keep their homes. If they're trying to raise their rent, raise their mortgages, raise whatever in order to get them out, don't let them do that. Right? That's going to further all the problems. And the other thing is it can't be based on race. Everyone who's struggling should get help. It's as simple as that. And I think people who have criminal histories, they should get away to, because you can have that stuff expunged, but it costs a lot of money. And if you already don't work, then guess what? You don't have the money to do that. And you probably don't even know how to do that, right? So there's a lot of things they could do to help people get back on their feet and, actually be independent again. That's the whole thing. Help people depend on themselves. But if you don't help them, then if they're stuck, then they're always going to be stuck until someone comes along and starts helping them better themselves. I think at that point that if someone is like at the bottom, right, they have like literally nothing, then those are the people who are definitely considering, selling drugs. They're considering doing all these other things in order to, to get out of that situation, right? So if you want to decrease crime, go after those people and help them, right? Help them before they commit any violent crimes, before they do something that they could never come back from.
Doc, anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest is forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's...
See, we're going to do a whole lot more. What whole lot more are you talking about, right? He's talked about one dynamic, one thing that could help a lot of people, and I'm not discrediting him for that, but it needs to go a lot further than just that. And the thing about it is, as far as getting your record expunged, I think it cost like $500 last time I checked. What if they created a program that would just go through the system, I guess as long as it's been long enough or whatever. But they should be able to work with people though, right? They should be able to work with people. If they could go through, expunge your record, give you a clean start, give you the tools and the things you need in order to actually go and start working, right? Give you temporary shelter, give you the things you're going to need, and then help you go and get a job, right? Then, once they're working, they could start paying off that debt they have for getting their record expunged. They could pay off a little bit at a time. And then of course a lot of people are going to say, oh, that's crazy. They're not going to, help anyone who doesn't have anything already. I understand that sentiment, but if you really want to help communities, it's like Joe Biden just said, he wants to help black communities. That's where you start. That's where you start. And white communities in poverty, they need help too. They need the same freaking thing. Programs like that should not be based on race. They should be based on needs, right? It's just like Medicare, Social Security, all these other things. They're not based on race. They're based on needs. They're based on, if you're disabled, if you're blind, if you're this or if you're that. It has nothing to do with race. And if you make it solely based on race, that you're creating a huge problem.
Right, it's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not.
Exactly. And I think it was around the beginning of this where they said it was slightly higher. I think it was like, what, $20 more than it used to be or something like that. I think that's what they said at the beginning. And I heard that and I was like, nah, I don't think so. It is way more than what you're trying to say. Okay? Trust me, it is bad. But of course, like, who am I telling? I don't need to tell anybody. Everybody already knows that.
Not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New Scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation.
Now, yeah, we're going to get to that statement in just a second. Is he really going to say there's no inflation? Like, I don't know. That's what it sounds like he's getting ready to say. We'll wait and critique that after he gets done with whatever he's getting ready to say. But so far, like, again, Biden just seems like he's in a different world. Like, he's just oblivious to what's really going on. So, like, I guess someone else does all the shopping and buys everything he needs. So he's probably not even looked at gas prices, not even looked at what groceries are costing right now. Now, the other thing too, what Trump is talking about here, if a lot more people are losing their jobs, which, like I said, we need facts, okay? So that's going to have to be proven that people are actually losing their jobs to illegal immigrants. Like, that would just be pure insanity. Okay, the idea that people are saying, oh, they're giving them luxury hotels. Where are they getting luxury hotels, right? And the other thing too is, if they're really doing that, they can't anyone go up there and say, hey, I'm an illegal immigrant, I don't have any paperwork or identification. Then wouldn't that person just automatically be accepted as an illegal immigrant? The point that I was making about that yesterday, right? I put a comment on someone's video, and I said, where's the proof that all this is happening, right? Like, is there a website where they're going to describe all these things? Is there a number we can call and say, hey, I'm an illegal immigrant, I need a 5-star hotel, I need a job, I need all these other things, can you do that for me? Where's the people we could call and get that information? That's what I'd like to know.
The worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. 15% unemployment. He decimated the economy, absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time. There were no jobs. We provided thousands of millions of jobs for individuals who are in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, if the ACA has increased, I made sure that they're $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again, and they're going to try again if they win. You find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing any, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on, but in inflation, he caused.
What? Trump wants to defund the police? Are you kidding me? We're like, that is not a right-wing talking point. That's left-wing talking point. Does Joe Biden think he's going up against a Democrat right now? I'm starting to see why, it looks like I haven't really done a whole lot of research into this yet because I haven't seen the debate. I'm just now watching the debate. But I've seen some headlines. I've seen some video titles. And according to some of the titles I've read, the Democrats are panicking. And it looks like they might be considering pulling Joe Biden out of there and getting someone else. And I think that's what they should do. Look, a lot of people roast Joe Biden, right? Like he's oblivious, he's falling down, he's doing all these other things. And it's like, dude, he's an elderly man. And it's like they have such a good time making fun of him, right? Joe Biden tried to ride a bike and fell over. Can't go upstairs. All these other things. And I'm like, if it was Trump, once Trump gets to that point, right, where he starts going through and having memory loss, like if he gets to that stage, right, then is it all of a sudden going to be like, hey, wait a minute, you shouldn't be making fun of him, it's just old age? Are you going to take that approach at that point? But then at this point say, oh, that's hilarious, Biden falling upstairs and can't talk and have, he has dementia and all these other things. But then if it happens to Trump, then you're like, hey, wait a minute, that's not funny, that's just someone getting older. That's kind of a double standard in my opinion. It goes without saying, though, Biden is a lot older than Trump. So it's not like I'm saying they're both on the same level. The only thing I'm saying is we shouldn't have double standards, right? If you're going to say it's okay to make fun of Biden, then anyone making fun of Trump, you should be okay with that too, right? We're supposed to have the freedom of expression, freedom of opinion, freedom of speech. We're supposed to be able to make fun of whatever president we want. So it's not like I'm saying they shouldn't make fun of Biden, only to a small degree, and say he is an elderly man and it's not really all that funny, to keep roasting him because of something he can't help. Because he is, he's what, 90 years old, I think? I'm just looking at it in a perspective of making fun of anyone else, because of them going through all these changes once they hit a certain age, right? If it's anyone else, I say absolutely not. That's not funny. An elderly man falling over, we shouldn't be laughing at that, right? When it comes to the president, I think at that point it's like, why do we have anyone being a president, being in, the White House, anyone like that is of that certain age, right? Like, you're way beyond the age of retirement. Why are you still working? Why are you trying to be the president again at, such an elderly age, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so because of that, I say, maybe we should make an exception. Like, anyone in a position of power that's having those problems, like, it should be well known. You should not be in a position of power if you don't have the mental clarity to handle that power adequately, right? So I think it's much different than just anyone else, like your neighbor who's elderly and has trouble walking or something like that. If you're going to go make fun of him, then yeah, I'm going to say you're absolutely wrong. That's not funny. Make fun of Joe Biden? Okay, that is kind of funny. Just a little bit. It's still bad because it's still an elderly man, right? But at the same time, like I said, a little bit of exception, to the rule there, right? But then again, if you're going to make fun of Biden, don't get mad at someone else for making fun of Trump. Okay? That's just the way I see it. Don't have a double standard. Because you have the freedom of speech to make fun of whoever you want. Let someone else on the other side make fun of the guy they don't like. Right? Alright, guys. We will be back for part 3